Friends, welcome, welcome. I'm here with Caroline Myss, a special webinar on the science of medical intuition, and I'm so grateful that you're all joining us. Let me tell you just a little bit about Caroline. First and foremost, she's a friend to me, a friend to Sounds True. We've worked together now. Gosh, I think it's getting, I think it's 3 decades.
Yes.
So
it's a long time, kiddo.
Yeah, and I have to say, Caroline, it keeps getting better. It keeps getting better. It's awesome to have the kind of partnership that we have. Many of you know Caroline as one of the most accurate and well-respected medical intuitives in the world. As a medical intuitive, that means she's able to sense, assess, diagnose illness through intuitive means, and that's what we'll be talking about in this session. She is the author of many books, including 5 New York Times bestsellers, books that have been so influential in so many of our lives: Sacred Contracts, Anatomy of the Spirit, Why People Don't Heal, and Why They Can. And with Sounds True, Caroline has created north of 20 intensive learning programs with us, including a program on the science of medical intuition, self-diagnosis and healing with your body's energy system. And for those of you who are joining us on a player page, if you want to learn more about this course, The Science of Medical Intuition, just click the Learn More button on the page. If you're on YouTube joining us, you can learn more about the Science of Medical Intuition course in the notes section, in the show notes. And then if you're with us here on Sounds True 1, We'll put the link about the course in the chat. And as a Sounds True One member, you get a special member discount of 20%. And for those of you who are joining us and are like, what is this Sounds True One thing anyway? It's our new community platform. And if you want to learn more, go to join.soundstrue.com. All right, Carolyn, let's get started. And I want to begin by talking about intuition in general, even before we go deep into the topic of medical intuition. How do you see the nature of intuition? Is it like we have access to some universal mind, or how is it that you see it?
You know, I have evolved in my understanding of intuition through the years, obviously, because it's a primary skill. And that's how I think of it now, Tami. But I think of intuition as one of the survival skills that we're born with, but I'll describe it like this. And that's that we're born wired to listen to our inner self, because intuition at the gut level, and it progresses through stages of its refinement in us. And at the gut level, it is a primary survival skill that just says, you know, don't go in there, don't go in that room, don't do this, don't, you know, slow down, there's ice ahead, kind of. It's because this is what's true. The universe is a very conscious being, and part of and this is the nature of organic divinity. The way the universe has set up its mechanism is to support the survival of life. And part of the survival mechanism is survival guidance that just flows into all creatures. It flows into the animal kingdom, the animal instinct, you know, run to higher ground, a tsunami's coming. And it flows into us. And at the survival level, it is that basic gut instinct that says, I don't trust this person, and I don't know why. And you don't even at the survival level have to be aware that it's intuition or think about it the way we do. It just engages, which is why gamblers, you talk about a gambler's instinct, or someone who plays the stock market. It's just a basic survival instinct. It's someone who says, I'm going to play a hunch. And what causes intuition from the survival instinct to then mature to the next level, which is a more conscious inner voice, is the development of self-esteem. It's that you esteem your own inner sense. You begin to pay attention to your own inner instincts, that you think, you know, it's like the consequence of self-respect or but it really is what self-esteem is all about, is that I trust my gut instincts. And if I were to put this in mystical language, it's your growing relationship with the thread of truth, of how truth makes its way into our experience as human beings, from the toilet water to cologne to perfume. And at the toilet water stage, it's this gut instinct. But as we mature and we develop our sense of self, which is a whole nother discussion, why are we compelled to do that? Why is self-empowerment so important to the population that is post-nuclear war, nuclear age, when it was never an issue before? We are people who have become obsessed with our interior world, and our inner senses are part of that journey into our inner self. And the development of the self is people don't even realize they're awakening this inner voice, this inner relationship. And that's that next level of gut instinct, but it's a higher, more refined self. And then they start asking more refined questions like, well, I wonder what the reason is that I've been born. I wonder what I'm supposed to be doing here. The questions about one's life become more refined. They become closer to question prayers. Then someone wants to seek guidance. And guidance is yet another level, because now what you're doing is you're actually turning your conscious attention to the inner world. Whereas before, all of this instinct is operating just purely on the survival mechanism. But as you become more conscious, the mechanism becomes more conscious, as does what is expected of you to be able to hear and respond to that.
All right, let me ask you a personal question, Caroline.
Ask me anything.
You are, dare I say, one of, this is a qualified statement, I can definitely say this, the most intuitive people I have ever met in my 60 years on the planet, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is? Like, what about how you've approached your life has enabled your instinct to mature in the way that it has?
All right, I'm just going to make up an answer. This is what I think. Okay. I don't have many distractions, Tami. I don't have many distractions. I think when I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at the camera, and I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting the angle right.
You're doing it great. You're doing great. You're doing great.
You know what, Tami? I don't have many distractions, for one thing. And the second thing, and this is really the truth, and I'm very uncomfortable talking about this, but I have never experienced doubt about what exists in the non-physical world. I've never felt disconnected. In fact, I've always felt more connected to that world. And I can tell you, when I found my spiritual director 25 years ago, I actually said to him, I need to find a way to feel connected to the physical world, because I don't. I need to somehow break through this. I feel like I'm owned by the non-physical world and I can't get out. And then I know that may not make sense to you, but the non-physical world has the mystical world, the world of all of, which is a world I cannot see with my eyes physically, but I've understood it. And I know its presence is as real to me as you are. And I've trusted that so deeply. And in the years growing up, I've heard it whisper to me. And its guidance has been as clear as I'm speaking to you, always in my left ear. And only when I've needed it to either save my life or to explain a situation I'm in. And I'll give you an example, and it's one I use all the time, but because it was so extraordinary. And I was driving home from work one day at midnight when I was in college, and I worked at a candy factory where they made Snickers. And it was a little after midnight, and I heard, slow down, a red truck's going to run the stop sign at the next street. Now, I heard that, but I didn't stop and say, oh my God, I'm hearing a voice. And as soon as the red truck ran the stop sign, I realized I had been told that that would happen. And it never occurred to me, not then, not as a child when these things happened, and never through my adult years, that when I had incidences like that I was in any way, shape, or form crazy. In fact, after that experience, I drove home that night giggling like crazy, saying to God, I cannot get over that you even watch where I drive. I can't get over it. All it did was increase my sense of safety and intimacy with the invisible world. So when I I was always incredibly perceptive. When I was a kid, and I would be driving with my mother, I would have these hits. And I'd say to her, you know what's going on in that house? You know what's going on there? You know what's going on? I would do these wild readings that meant nothing, but I was just like, pshh, 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 pshh. And I remember walking in, even when I was looking for a house to buy, I walked in one and I said, someone just died in here, and someone did, and I walked out because I didn't want that energy. It never occurred to me to say to myself, you must be crazy. Instead, and I think this could be how grace works, I looked at it like, how in the world do people get through life without being this connected to God? How do they do it? How do they walk out their front door without being this connected, this intensely, intimately connected? How, I wouldn't set foot out in the world without this connection. I would be terrified. And when I think of things, I had, I went through a period of a couple of years where I had grand mal seizures, as you know, about 25 years ago. And I was sitting at the counter when I had a townhouse 20 years ago. It was the last seizure I had. And I could feel this grand mal coming on. And I knew I'm sitting at the counter, and I thought, I've got to get to a soft landing. I've got to get to the couch. I've got to get off, and I looked down and I thought, this will break my neck, because I was sitting on one of those higher chairs that you have at a breakfast thing. And I thought, I'm going to break my neck. And then I heard my guide who said, let go, I've got you. And boom. And Tami, I woke up on the ground. I should have had a broken skull or a broken neck, but not an injury. And the chair I was on was 10 feet from me. 10 feet, Tami. And the first time I had a grand mal, because I've had about 6 in this period of time. I was still in New Hampshire. That's how far back these experiences were. And I woke up on the floor in my office in the farmhouse, and I looked at the clock, and the clock had been turned around on my desk to face me, and the phone was on the floor next to me, on the floor. And as I lay there, I thought, what happened to me? And I heard my guide, and he said, you've had a grand mal, call Norm. Now, I'm never told, you'll be fine, you don't have a brain tumor, you'll just be fine, pull yourself together, da-da-da-da. But I follow these instructions with such trust and confidence. So I got up and I went to Norm's clinic, and I went through all the MRIs, and he was looking for a brain tumor, and this intimacy with heaven doesn't mean you're off the hook from any illness or anything like that. So I spent 4 years with dealing with, idiopathic seizure activity. They couldn't figure out why. I broke my nose. I busted my forehead. I had all kinds of horrible things happen. And then it ended. And during that time, I mean, my wiring was, they call it the mystics disorder. And I think maybe there's a lot of truth to that, because my inner wiring was shifting. And there was a moment where I could actually feel things getting burned into my brain. I know it sounds a little bit odd, except that it's not. So,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that for me, the mystically unreasonable has always been incredibly comfortable. I've simply always understood this world, and it's made sense. And it's been my reference point for, when I went into medical intuition and I started to do readings, I mean, I came from a background of theology and journalism and history. I'd never taken an anatomy class, never took anything. So I had to go on trust of my gut instinct and intuition, which, all right, by this time I was 30 years old, and um, I left my life in Chicago and went up to New Hampshire. Didn't want to go there, but I did. So now I ended up doing medical intuitive readings with Norm Shealy, who I'd met at this meeting in Kansas. And nobody was more surprised than I was that I could do these readings with such accuracy. But with each reading, I felt as if I was entering a universe I didn't know existed. I didn't know we had a human energy system like this. Now, coming from a background in mystical theology, I was schooled in the soul, but not an energy anatomy. All right. This was, and here is another thing that I owe everything to what I learned in as a medical intuitive. I had no idea that every single choice we make is truly an act of creation, or that we are as finely organized energetically in our anatomical system as we are physically. Today, I would teach that we live in a biospiritual ecology, and that we are micro earths, and that every single choice you make, everything, is an incredible act of creation. And that self-esteem is your major building block in order to get how incredibly powerful you are. And that one of the reasons each person feels such deep resentment when they say things like, I have to get my power back, is because power is the fundamental ingredient of the human experience. It is our power that we are here to manage, to govern, to use creatively. That in fact, the journey of life is actually the journey of moving from our love of power to the power of love. And that is essentially the journey every one of us is on. And that journey plays out in our biospiritual ecology, which is our body. So for me, medical intuition and medical intuitives, and I would love to see the College of Medical Intuition open one day. That I think, because now when I look at what causes us to lose power, the ingredient of power has to be included in every single health interview, which is how do you use your power? What intimidates you? There has to be some kind of power evaluation. Do you lie? Are you comfortable with truth? Where are you on that scale? Because these are the actual stressors that then in turn become the anxieties within a person that then trigger our chemistry.
Now, Caroline, in the Science of Medical Intuition training course that you and Norm have created, you're teaching people how they can engage with their own health, their own health condition, how to do a self-assessment, how to listen more deeply, how to receive guidance. And I want to talk to that person now who's with us, who says, look, I have a health condition that nobody seems to be able to tell me what's really at the root. And I've done a lot of inner searching, and I'm still confused. And I'm a person of integrity. It's not like I'm running around lying and stealing. I just don't understand what's at the root of my health condition. How is a program like this going to help me? And right here in this moment, Caroline, what can you say to somebody who has that level of just deep confusion and isn't quite sure how to turn into their own inner guidance at this point?
Well, the first thing I would point out is that if you're asking a medical intuitive, if you were asking me, you're first of all crossing a very important Rubicon. And that's that you're moving from the world of polarity, where you think there's one answer for every one problem, to a world to the hologram world, where I have to introduce you to a very different form, a very different template of cause and effect that includes multiple forces instead of this world, which is for every one problem, there's one answer. So if you're going to go into the world of intuitive sciences, you have to cross a Rubicon, which means I'm entering into a different reality space. And in this space, there's no such thing as one answer. The second thing, so it's almost like I have to prep you. The second thing is I have to break that circuit in you that says, I'm a good person, so why did bad things happen to me? That somehow or other, and if I could just find the one thing, then everything will be put back together again, just the way it was, which is in this world, the way people think. And I know that because I've done over 10,000, 12,000 readings, that when people come in, where that obstacle course is that they're looking for one reason why this happened. What's the one reason why I got sick? And that's that typical model in the world of polarity. There's everything's right or wrong, good or bad. But in this world, in the world of intuitive science, you've entered into a hologram where there are multiple forces working in you. And in that world of the hologram, these forces are neither good or bad. You are just now looking at, how is it that I live? What are my stresses? So you've got to get out of this, I'm looking for just one thing, but now I'm looking to understand who I am and how I use my power and how the distribution of the power in my life is either nurturing me or it's not. So you're working within now a whole different way of looking at your health. So that's that right there is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, is that you've crossed into a very different approach to how to even understand your health and healing.
Okay, when you say how I'm using my power in ways that either nourish me or don't, tell me more what you mean by that. Maybe give an example of.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, when I was doing readings, one of the first major insights that I finally really got was that I was doing readings, if we use that word. And what I was reading was how a person made choices and the consequence to their energy system that those choices engaged. So if we make a choice and we have to be resentful, if we make a choice to be addicted, look at all the cravings we have. We make a choice that says, I simply have to have this lipstick. I have to, and you understand me? And if I don't, and that what people don't understand, and it'll take forever to get human beings to understand that, is that each of these choices actually has an energetic consequence. And that energy is that if people could picture themselves, even as we're speaking, as just extend your arms as far as you can and just imagine that you're in a bubble, and that is the full length of yourself, and that you actually really do have life force coming into you all the time. It's your prana, it's your breath, it's your life, okay? And that you are always distributing every choice you make. You're directing your life force. A choice costs you energy. It costs you energy. If you just, it's like shopping. I mean, buying something costs you money. And if you don't buy anything, you don't even remember it. You walk out of the store and you're not attached to anything. But if you buy something and use your charge card, you can create huge debt and you owe something. And so you're attached to it. So what I was reading attachments. I was reading the attachments people have, and it's like a magnetic string that they have. And a number of attachments cause people to just drain their power, so that even though I'm looking at someone who's physically in front of me, the majority of their energy has been distributed like fragments to different places in their psychic field that are not productive. So it's like all the great teachers in the scriptures. Why are you holding on to the dead? So people stay attached to, for example, I should have, could have, would have. I should have done this. I could have done this. This could have been me. Resentments. I just resent those people because blah, 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 blah. Or this person said this to me and I can't forgive them. Why do you think forgiveness is always emphasized? All the things people hang on to, or physical addictions, alcohol, drugs, cravings, the craving of attention, how people will use the beauty of their life creative force, and all they do is direct it toward the need to get attention. Think about how the thoughts people dwell in. They strategize. I've got to get more attention. I've got to get this. I've got to get that. The waste of time. And each one of these, does it produce anything? Does it bring you back a harvest? When you invest your energy in something creative that supports the life supports life, that makes life better for anybody, whatever it is, that makes life better for yourself or makes life better for someone else in any way, shape, or form, creating a Sounds True program, writing a book, teaching a class, being kind to someone, going to visit someone, taking care of a sick relative, whatever it is, you are investing your life force in life, and it creates a harvest for you. And that comes back, and sure, you might be exhausted from it, but it doesn't drain your energy. It doesn't cost you in the same way that investing your energy in resentments or negative things do. I assure you.
You must have seen and known cases of people who did a lot of inner investigation, weren't holding on to bitterness, resentment, and yet still went through some kind of disease progression
Yes.
and died.
Yes.
How do you understand that?
Because, Tami, life is not logical or fair. And every life we have is not just the life we have. And I think sometimes the challenges we have, and this is going to be difficult to explain, but I'll give it my best shot. I don't know that we live one life at a time. Okay. I think that sometimes we have a micro self and we have a macro self. And I think that we oftentimes run psychic free radicals through our system that belong to the collective, and they don't belong to us. And we have, because we're part of the collective. So we are micro and we are macro. What is in one is in the whole. What is in the whole is in the one. So each of us is also breathing in the quality of the collective pollution that must come through us as well. So our suffering and our challenges are not personal all the time. They are not. Sometimes we, just like when somebody is in a tsunami, it's not personal. It's part of what happens in nature. It's not personal. And sometimes our sufferings are not personal. And all that we do to heal, we're as challenging as this might seem, we have to remember we're not getting off this planet alive. So death is not failure. Death is not failure. And that question comes from the position that death is failure. And that if we don't heal, it's failure. And that is not the truth. That every single person, there comes a point where we will have to say fare thee well to each other, and we'll see each other on the other side. And somehow or other, we cannot seem to incorporate that truth into how we understand the journey of life. But like Arjuna and Krishna sitting at the edge of the battlefield, when Arjuna says to Krishna, I fear the fabric of the universe is going to split in this battle. And if I go and I kill people on the other side, it endangers my karma. If I don't fight this battle, there will go my dharma. I am called to fight, but to which Krishna replies, yes, you will kill them, but the universe has provided, and there'll be another life, and there'll be another time. Here's the thing, we see things through such a small lens, Tami, such a small lens. And nobody wants to see their loved ones pass. Nobody. God knows I've had to see so many of my family members die and friends. Many this past year and a half. But I think the idea that somehow or other, the goal of life is to get our physical form to exist as long as it can forever we've morphed something, Tami. That's not the goal. The goal is to live as well as we can and to use our energy and soul as magnificently as we can. But make no mistake, we're going to be called home.
I understand, Caroline, but there's a difference between forever and I think a genuine desire to live a very long and healthy life. And I
Right.
think many of us want to live a long and healthy life and see anything short of that as a form of loss or defeat.
Yes. And I certainly agree with that. And I wish that there were logical reasons that I could offer people, logical and just and fair reasons that I could offer people, like, well, you're not healing and here's the reason, and da, 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 da. But I have to say that we have a way of pulling karma into our reasoning when convenient, but not when not convenient. Okay. And I don't know how karma works itself out. And I also don't know, like, I have done just a handful of readings in which the condition the person had was not because of anything I could identify in this life, but rather from a life yet to be lived.
Whoa, yet to be lived.
Yet to be lived. A life yet to be lived. And as I say, I've only done a few of these where that the life yet to be lived was influencing this life so strongly. And that, and from the universe's point of view, everything's a blink of an eye. From ours, it's like, look at the clock and look at the time, right? But I thought, oh my God, this is, when these readings first popped up, and as rare as they were, and it happened over a period of maybe 8 or 9 years, and there were only 4 or 5 of them. But with each time I got a reading like that, my sense of what I would call vertical consciousness, simultaneity, instead of this horizontal, year after year after year, it went into this sense of vertical, that in fact, we're shifting. That, if I had to explain the great shift we're living, it really is the shift from horizontal to vertical consciousness, to simultaneity, to moving into the hologram, which means that in that space, in the Kairos world, all things are simultaneous. There is no such thing as history in energy, Tami. There's no such thing as history in energy. Your energy contains everything. That even in reading your energy, what I was reading was yet a different dimension of energy that is pressing upon us, but it doesn't make its way in that easily, because it's a different dimension. But it did in these 5 readings. And I realized that was also influencing us. And Tami, what this moment of consciousness is about is that our lenses are opening up so we can include this data in understanding the nature of our own magnificent consciousness. And that, how is it we will have to live if we begin to realize that other lifetimes are actually really influencing us. And as I think of them seeping into people, here's this, I think one of the reasons we have to develop such an extraordinary sense of self is so that the parameters of who we are can touch the parameters of who we've been, who we might be. Otherwise, what we will say as we stand in our body is, I'm hearing voices, I must be going mad.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know as part of the Science of Medical Intuition training course, Norm Shealy offers a past life regression guided experience. But I'd love to know, Caroline, since you've done more than 10,000 readings, have you seen past lives influencing someone's health? And could you share an example of, an anonymous sort of situation, but give us a sense of how someone's past life was impacting their health?
Tami, you want to know, the first time I did a reading on a past life came up, I didn't even realize it until because this is the kind of stuff I had no use for, right? I mean, it's the past life. So Norm calls me up and there's someone in his office, right? And he only gave me name and age. That was all. And I instantly get this image. And so I wanted to just say to the audience, what's an image like? And an image is like if I said to everybody right now, I want you to think of what your living room looks like. So you'll get a picture in your mind of a living room, but it's not an actual picture, and it's this familiar pixel. And that's what a reading is like. It's like a pixel that comes in, but it's not familiar. I have no attachment to it. So I get this pixel of this woman, but she's dressed like a pirate. She's got this low cut dress on and a long skirt and a kind of a knife at her side. And so I said to Norm, and of course she's sitting right in front of Norm and Norm's on the phone. And I said, Norm, why is she dressed like that? And he said, and he's looking at a country woman from Springfield, Missouri.
Right.
And he's just looking at her in a blouse and a pair of jeans. And he says, I don't know, maybe she likes it. And I said, Norm, didn't your staff say anything to you when she came in? And he said, what are you looking at? And I said, a pirate. And he said, oh my God. And he said, keep going. And I said, well, she looks like a pirate to me. And I said, and I don't know. I said, something happened to her neck. I said, what? He said, all right, I'm calling you back. Well, he hangs up the phone and he says, what do you say? And she was like more or less a fundamentalist. And he said, would you agree to a little, like, I don't think he called it past life, Tami. I think he inner relaxation, something like that. But he did this, guided meditation. That's what I call it, guided meditation. She instantly sees herself on a pirate ship getting slashed to the neck, and she was in there for phantom goiter pain.
Uh-huh.
So that was the first one. That was the first one. So there were several. They weren't all that dramatic or all that specific, but yes, the past life was very much so.
Okay, we're getting lots of good questions that people are writing in. Feel free, friends who are with us, the Q&A tab, you can write in your questions. We have someone who's written in, is meditation the best way to strengthen our intuition?
No.
And I'm going to add, if not, what is?
No. I don't meditate. I have no use for it. But if you want to meditate, you go right ahead. The best thing to strengthen your meditation is self-esteem and trust, and to develop a sense of rapport with truth. Now, if meditation helps you do that, you go right ahead. But what helps you to develop your sense of self? And I will tell you, it's not telling people this is what I need and blah, 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 blah. That's baby stuff. Developing your sense of self is all about developing faith. And I mean faith and trust in yourself. Developing a sense that you can trust your own word to yourself, that you can have faith in yourself. That if someone says, if Tami said to me, Carol, will you keep this? Can I confide something in you? And if I said to Tami, you certainly can, she knows, because I know that that will never be broken.
Okay, when it comes to deepening our sense of trust, it's one thing to keep our word, to ourselves. Okay, I get that. But let's say, I'll speak for myself for a moment. I get intuitive guidance and I listen. And often though, Caroline, I have a question mark inside. I have doubt. You said I never have doubt. I have a lot of doubt. I'm like, really? That seems really like it's not 100%.
No, I'm glad you said that. I don't have doubt about God. That doesn't mean I don't have doubt about basic day-to-day stuff. Okay. I don't have doubt about the presence of and the constancy of the divine in my life. Do I have doubt about what am I being guided to do today? Absolutely. Absolutely. So what do I do there? Is that there's kind of a metronome that says, like, for example, doubt about what am I supposed to write? Okay. And why, you're right. And with that, I will say, all right. So I will start with where am I insecure? And I will dive into that because I know you're talking to me. And so obviously the block is not on your side, it's on mine. So what is it I don't want to hear? And I'll start there because there are certain assumptions I always make, which is you never stop guidance. I do. So I have to check all the valves. And the valves are, what don't I want to hear? What don't I want to act on? So I have to check my valves because guidance never stops flowing. Okay.
Which yeah, it brings me to this quote of yours that I wanted to ask you about, where you say, you have to meet your intuition halfway, if not more, in order to become a refined, laser sharp vessel.
Right.
And I wanted to understand this notion of meeting our intuition halfway, if not more.
Well, because, and by that, I mean, intuition is not rational. Okay. It's not a rational sense. It's not, we have it in our, it's intuitive. Let's call it our intuitive intelligence. All right. Our intuitive intelligence and our intellectual intelligence. When I say meet it halfway, I mean meet it on its own terms. Don't expect intuitive intelligence to function like physical intelligence, like scientific intelligence, even though it's subject to the same laws, like intellectual intelligence, where you're looking up something and think, I need to back this fact up and I can look it up here. Intuitive intelligence, you can't necessarily back it up. You have to meet it halfway, which means now I have to go on gut instinct. I have to respect the science for what it demands of me. And when I say faith and trust, what I mean here is that you earn faith in yourself. And maybe I didn't emphasize how important this is, but you start out with saying, like, I'm going to walk around the block every day. And you don't break your word to yourself. You don't break, and you have to go through barriers, which will be your saboteur, which will say, I walk tomorrow. And you have to earn that sense of self-esteem that comes from, I don't break my word to myself first. And if I keep that kind of tight ship with myself in here, so that I go through the barriers of all the inner voices that I have to listen to that say, you don't want to walk, this, all the excuses. And I make it through one at a time, break that one, break that one, break that one. Now you're actually listening to the shadow side of your intuition. And you are actually getting how strong that is. And you're getting it. And you get through it. You get through it until when you finally get to the place where you recognize, when I say to myself, you know what, I'm not going to eat sugar anymore. It's a command now to your whole system. And then when your system starts giving you a command, you listen. This is a rapport and a language that you develop, and this is how it's developed. It's not developed by meditating. No way. It's developed by hardcore action in the world of faith and trust, so that you become a soldier inside, and you become tough with yourself. No excuses when you say, so that so when you say to yourself, that's it, we can't do sugar, because our body is telling us we can't do sugar, and you give yourself a command. That's it, it's off. And you're going to go through those barriers again where the saboteur comes up and all of this, and your gut intuition will say, break it. Don't break your word to yourself. You're going to hear your intuition guide you through this obstacle course. And that's what the thread that you have to listen to consistently. And the more you do, the more you begin to respect that. And then you realize, this is my survival voice. This is in fact tied to something else. And then one day you'll say to it, what do I do here? I don't know what kind of decision to make here. And it will say, go left, do this, and you'll listen.
When you say, when your body's saying to you something like, don't eat sugar, what's your counsel for how to listen to what your body's saying to you?
The law of balance is like in the world of biospiritual ecology. If you could think of that as the new science of God, biospirit, divine organics. The law of balance is this fundamental law that is like the metronome inside of you. It just goes tick, 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 tick. And we know, it knows when it's off a notch. It knows when, you've overeaten or undereaten, or when you need sugar or when you don't need sugar. And if you attune yourself to this, remember, here's something that is not emphasized enough, I think, Tami, and that's that all of the perceptual skills that we're talking about, which is why I'm so glad that Norm and I made this wonderful program. They require practice and knowledge. You have to know what the human energy system looks like. You have to know how it's organized. You have to memorize this. You have to practice the human energy system. You have to live in your human energy system. You have to start thinking in terms of what's distributed where. And you have to start thinking in the language of energy. You have to start responding in it. It's not as simple as I think I'll just know it in an instant because I need to know it today, without earning that, because this invisible world is its own fluid reality that you have to learn your way through here. This is why this program for me is so valuable. It teaches you, this is what your first chakra is like. Here are the contents of that part of your body. Here are the contents of that part of your energy system. Get to know this and then sense it. Memorize this. And when you're in a tribal issue, what are your tribal issues? And when you're in a tribal confrontation, when something tribal comes up, pay attention to what part of your body is going to activate, because it will be below your waist. It has to be below your waist because it's a tribal issue. When someone is dealing with self-esteem, it's going to hit you in your solar plexus. Why? Because that's where it's located. And it will affect your stomach. It will affect this part of your body. If financial issues, where do they hit you? They're going to hit your lower back, your sciatic nerve. It's going to hit this part. Why? Because that's how power is distributed in our body. The energetic anatomical system is as specific as the physical anatomical system. But you have to learn it. You have to learn every detail of it. And then you have to think in terms of power and the distribution of your power, so that when an issue becomes a power guide, and you realize this issue is going to play out in my lower back, and therefore I wonder if I'm feeling threatened by my survival. Do I feel threatened financially? You have to learn to use the parts of this in your head so that you can sense them in your energy field.
All right, I'm going to bring in another question here. This one from Lori, who writes in, I experience asthma. Recently, it seems I'm prone to pneumonia. When I have a wave of grief, I feel like I'm pulled into a pattern of lung weakness. I've been aware of this for many years. My son died by homicide 3 years ago, and since then, it's much harder. I appreciate your directness and your connection to the non-physical, and ask, what can I do differently?
Well, I don't know enough about what she's doing now to say what she's doing differently. But I do know that what she's describing is unacknowledged grief and pain. And I suspect that what my impression is that the world in which she lives, the environment in which she lives, her network of people has grown very small. And I don't think that there is the kind of support she would like to have for grieving. I think the grieving support has run dry, and it's located in her lungs. And I think that she doesn't know how to move on and continue living given this trauma, given the idea, like, can I actually get healthy? It's like guilt health. You like survival guilt? It's like, dare I even consider being healthy, considering what my son did? And I would ask her to this is not a rational question, it's an irrational question. And therein lies the answer, is the guilt about, dare I even consider getting healthy? This is like, do I feel like I need to keep grieving and suffering, and it has to be physical? am I willing to keep going and be healthy? I'm afraid to be healthy because it looks like I am moved on from his life. You see what I'm saying?
I do. Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that through the program, the Science of Medical Intuition, we're going to learn about how we practice working with the different energy centers. And I just want to understand a little bit more about how you experience, if you will, the different chakras, the different energy centers in the body. And I say that because, I think for a lot of people, those of us who don't see them or sense them, we've seen all these yogic diagrams and, we've read that there are colors and sounds, and it's kind of from the outside in. It's not from an inner experience out. And so I want to ask you, Carolyn, how do you sense the chakras, these energy centers?
You know what, Tami, I'm going to give you a very disappointing answer because I'm as colorful as my personality can be. I'm very dull as an intuitive in that I don't see anything. I sense it. I'm like Teresa of Avila. I have a sensing mechanism, but I see nothing. And now I simply sense a whole power package in somebody, so that I don't think anymore in terms of seven separate chakras, because now I blend them with the mansions and the tree of life and the seven chakras and the seven musical notes. So it's become a huge hologram for me in each person. And they become a living spiritual ecological center. And every person's like a mini universe for me, like a mini earth. I don't sense it the way I used to. When I first began, I had training wheels on, but I don't anymore. You see, I don't. And now a person's filled with archetypal patterns for me, and they're filled with power struggles, and they're filled with incredible potential, and they're filled with grace, and they're just this incredible bundle of holiness. Yeah.
All right, Carolyn, I just have two final questions for you. For somebody who's listening, who has a real health challenge and tuned into this webinar and is like, I tuned into this because I really want some help and I've heard some inspiring things, but I'm at a point where I am ready to pray my buns off right now for my health. And, I know Carolyn teaches a lot on prayer. She wrote a book, Divine Intimate Conversations with the Divine. What do you suggest to somebody in that situation?
Okay, so this is what I know to be absolutely the truth. Never tell God what to do, and here's how you pray. Miracles happen all the time, all the time. And so what you say to God is, I'm going to take the day shift and you take the night shift. And I would appreciate I want to rest with the healing angels. Take me out of my body when I sleep. And just send me with the healing angels and let them work with me all night and return me to my body in the morning and just repair and repair. And let me dwell on only the graces that bring me back to full health. And live in appreciation, not in mystery, not like, what have I done to do this? And what else can I do? And what else? But include in that. And if this is the challenge I need to deal with, then help me deal with this. Help me. Thy will be done. And as tough a prayer as that is to say, as tough a prayer as that is to say, that's it.
And then finally, Carolyn, you mentioned that, if you could wave a magic wand, you would start like a college or a higher academy of medical intuition training. And I've heard you say that you believe medical intuition is one of the most important sciences
I do.
that we need in the decades to come. Tell me why.
Because I think that most of us who are 40 years and older grew up in a world that we are now unlearning. In the world that we grew up in, energy, the reality of energy, energy consciousness, the power of our thoughts and emotions was not emphasized. Much less energy anatomy. None of that was emphasized. It wasn't even chakras. What we were never even told about everything that is now becoming commonplace. And so how we've come to understand where illness comes from and what medicine is and how we heal is based on an archaic model that comes from the last century, and it is ill-equipped for the next century. So here we are in the middle, where almost in the middle of this century, heading toward it, where we need to start to include in our template of what a human being is, our energetic anatomy system, our intuitive intelligence, our physical intelligence, our spiritual intelligence, the whole of us as an equal force, our bio-spiritual ecological system, recognizing that we are also equally attached to the health of the collective, that our health does not exist by ourselves, that the stress in the world is the stress in our psyche. The psychic health in the atmosphere is as much a factor in my health as my own psychic health. Just like if the air is polluted, there's no difference between physical pollution and psychic pollution. And they are both factors in the health of each one of us. And we simply don't get that. We simply don't get that. And we simply do not get, Tami, that, and this is the reason I know that religions are inevitably going to be obsolete. And that's because religions teach separateness. They teach that in order to be true to this religion, everything else is false because God belongs to this religion and not that religion, which is this idea of divide and conquer, separate. God's on our side. When in fact, we have now this model of holism and holistic, which says all things are integrated. That law of nature eclipses this nonsense in religion. You cannot thrive if you buy into this nonsense in religion. You can't thrive holistically because they counteract each other. So as we move ever more into the inevitable holistic community, religions will become obsolete. But the understanding of God as light, love, and law, as a transpersonal galactic force of all creation, this will replace a bio-spiritual ecology where we know we are co-creators and that we co-create what happens in my body, what is in one is in the whole, that the laws of the universe are in fact God within our blood and bones. This is where we're going.
Caroline Myss, along with Norm Shealy, they've created an 18-hour program called The Science of Medical Intuition. Included in the program is a full online workbook, plus a morning assessment tool and an evening assessment tool for you to practice and work along with the information coming from your energy centers, along with a video workshop on medical intuition featuring Carolyn and Norm. This program is a classic at Sounds True.
Wonderful program. Wonderful.
Hit the learn more button. If you're on the player page, we'll put the link in the chat. Sounds True 1 members, come join us. Use your 20% Sounds True 1 member code. Carolyn, you know, I say it every time, and every time it's true. I learn something new every single time we talk. I don't know how it happens, you know, but I do. Every single time I walk away somehow changed. So thank you so much for the thunderous originality that you bring to every conversation.
Thank you, my dear, dear forever
Thank you.
friend.
Sounds
All my
true.
love to you.
Waking up the
Thank
world.
you,
Thanks for being
everybody.
with us. Thank you.